Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. Trying to sound smart is the best way to sound dumb. That's what I think. And I'm a dumb guy, so I know what it's like to sound dumb. I sound dumb all the time. But it's legitimate dumb. It's not like trying to sound smart dumb. It's just plain being dumb, you know? To go dumber is when you try to sound smart. You try to talk about things you don't know anything about, you know? Like, you see this all the time, you know? Somebody at the mechanic talking to the mechanic because he read something on a forum somewhere, and he's trying to get the mechanic to believe that he knows, you can't fool me, I know what I'm talking about. As if the mechanic can't size him up in about 10 seconds. It doesn't take long. If you know something and somebody's pretending they know what you know, it's very easy to figure out that they don't know, you know? But yet people will do it. You know, I watch this channel. It comes up in my feed, in my YouTube feed, of guys that get caught LARPing as if they're cops, you know, and I watch the body cam footage of them being busted by real cops. You know, there's this whole subset of people that just literally, they buy all the cop gear, they buy a black SUV, they buy the lights, and they just go around pretending they're cops, you know? I mean, you can see why it would be tempting, but it's a lot of people. It's not just a couple people. There are a lot of people that do this. And they actually get away with it for a while before they're actually busted, you know? Because the smart ones, well, when the real cops are coming, they just kind of fade back into the distance and drive away before anybody can go, hey, who's that guy? Does anybody recognize this guy? But, you know, if you watch these conversations, it's just the perfect example of what I'm talking about, you know? The cops start talking about him. They go, oh, yeah, I work down and I'm stationed. And they know some of the cop lingo, you know, but they don't know all of it. So the cops that are questioning them very quickly realize, oh, yeah, this guy's not a cop. But they usually just keep asking questions and kind of humoring them to keep it going. And it gets painful. I feel bad for the guys that are lying sometimes because, you know, I'm not the most honest person in the world. I try to be. My operating theory is that the truth is a hell of a lot more interesting than any lie you're going to make up. It just is. If you're willing to really tell the truth, you're going to be a far more interesting person if you tell a lie. But, you know, there's sometimes you tell lies to not be mean. I think if I'm guilty of lying, the most often, and this is hard to believe because most people think I am mean, but believe it or not, most of the lies I tell are in order to not get into a fight with somebody or to not make them feel badly, you know? Humoring people is more likely when I'm going to lie. I think when else am I going to lie? You know, I'm really bad at it too. That's the other thing is you shouldn't, it kind of goes right with this. If you're not a good liar, you should stop lying. I learned this early on. I was a bad shoplifter. I always admired shoplifters. I had a friend named Fred, Polynesian guy, Samoan guy, and he would just, whenever we'd go shopping, he'd just steal things, and he'd get away with it. And I wouldn't know he was stealing things, even though I knew he was stealing things. He just knew how to steal things. I remember one time he walked out of Grand Central, which turned into Fred Meyer, with a full basketball standard. The pole, the backboard, the hoop and everything, because he had broken, we were at a party and he'd broken the standard for, what was her name? McDougal. Jana McDougal. We were at her house. He broke it, so we went to Grand Central, and he just walked out. He walked in, grabbed it, walked out with it. put it in the back of my friend Andrew's truck, and I just always thought, holy shit, how do you do that? As a skill, I was just kind of admired it. But like the third time, so I decided I'm going to try some shoplifting. Like the third time I tried it, I was stealing cassette tapes. You know, I stole General Public. That's the one that got me busted from Music Land and Fashion Place Mall. And I got busted. It was the third time I had ever shoplifted, because I was bad at it. I was bad at it. And then I went through a thing where I would change price tags at thrift stores, like the ultimate crime. I mean, can you believe it? Something that's already at a thrift store, I got to get it cheaper. So I never got caught switching price tags. That's the level of nervousness that I can get away with. Actually stealing, apparently, I just look like a person that's stealing. But changing some price tags, I used to do that, and I got away with that for a long time. But, I was really embarrassed. I was 17 when I got caught. My mom cried, and my stepdad was disappointed because he thought I was the good kid, and I got caught shoplifting, you know. But then, around the time I was 30, I decided, I had already figured out that I was never going to have another job. I was never going to be employed by another person again. And I thought, I should give this shoplifting thing a go again. I was like 20, I guess I was 28, 27 or 29, somewhere around there. It's right before I bought my house in San Francisco. But I actually decided I wanted to write a paper, an article about shoplifting. This big expose. I was interviewing bands and stuff for this local magazine called Grid Magazine. And I thought, I'll write an expose. I'm going to steal Polaroid film. I'm going to take pictures of how the places I stole Polaroid film from. And then I'll say how I stole it. I'll get caught and whatever. And I was going to write this big story on it, with this angle about the justice system, just being a fuckface, trying to be vice before vice. It was kind of like that attitude, But I stole Polaroid film one time. It worked. Got away with it, Second time, boom, busted. Right off the bat, at, what was it, Safeway? Is it Safeway? No, Smith's Food King in Salt Lake City. And I just immediately got busted. I put it in my pocket. I started walking out the store. I saw the guy looking at me, by the way, and I thought, nah, he didn't really see me, like an idiot. I start walking out the front door of Smith's, and he comes up to me and says, "You're coming with me," and grabs my arm. I go, "Oh, fuck, I'm busted." He took me up into the little room up in, the little office that overlooks the grocery store. And I said, "Be honest with me. How rank me on a scale of 1 to 10? How good or bad am I?" Because I was still in this idea that I'm going to write about it. But I said, "Rank me on a scale of 1 to 10." He said, "You're a 1, buddy." A 1. I said, "Come on, really? A 1?" He said, "I knew you were going to shoplift when you walked in. Before you even walked over there, I knew what you were up to." So anyway, yeah, I'm bad at it. I'm just bad at it. But that wasn't my last time. Because I'm stubborn. I'm like, I can't be this bad at it. I didn't like that idea. So I moved to San Francisco. I've been down here for 3 years. I had a roommate that was also good at shoplifting. He was a shoplifter. Every time I'd go shopping with him, he'd come out with stuff he got for free. And I'd be like, what the? And I was this non-judgmental, edgy kind of guy. So again, I tried it. And it was the stupidest one. I went to an art place. I wanted to get these little rubber stamped letters, And I wasn't even in my mind going, okay, I'm going out to shoplift. I went to this art store to get these little rubber letters to stamp. I don't know what I was making, but some little crafty gay project, And I found myself up in the store, and I thought, these could fit in my pocket, right? So this one, I wasn't even entering thinking I'm going to go shoplift. So I thought, Okay, when I decided, I picked them up, I thought, oh, I'll try to shoplift. Same thing. So this was the first try on round 3. So I'm getting worse, actually, because on my first go around, it was like my third try I got caught. On my second go around, it was my second try. And on my third time getting caught, it was my first try on the third round. And that was the end of my shoplifting days. Again, none of these guys ever reported me to the cops or whatever. This guy was smart. He marched me back to the office, took my picture. And I'm like 32 years old. So at this point, it's pretty pathetic and pretty embarrassing, right? But he marched me across the street to an ATM, and apparently this is a legal thing that they can do, a compensation, blah, 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 punishment thing, where he said, just, you're going to take out $400 and you're going to pay it off right now. And so I did it. I just put my number in, and it ended up costing me $400. Those stupid letters that were only $2.50. You know what I mean? I'm bad at shoplifting. I'm bad at lying. You know, I'm almost positive people know what here's another way that I'm bad at lying. I can't keep scammers on the phone. It drives me fucking nuts. I got all these different kinds. It's weird though, because I can do prank phone calling. I can do prank phone calling and keep people on the line forever with characters that I do. However, when scammers are calling me and I try to keep them running, I try to keep them on the line. I mean, occasionally I can keep on the line, but most of the time they know I'm full of shit and they just hang up on me. Anyway, it's kind of going off on a tangent here, but if you're bad at something, you shouldn't do it. And if you don't know about something, you shouldn't pretend you do. Because people know. They know. In fact, that's how I test out artificial intelligence chat bots, chat engines, Grok, ChatGPT. I ask it questions to which I know the answer. And that's how I know that AI is actually dumb. I did that today. I said, let me ask Grok if it knows anything about a show my band played in Southern California right after the Rodney King riots, right? And it was just like not getting anywhere. I was like, I'm looking for this. And it just made up shit about my band. It got some details right. I was impressed that it knew certain things about my band, but it just made shit up, And I was like, no, it was promoted by this guy named John Panel. Look harder. And he goes, well, I don't see anything with John Panel. There's blah, blah, blah. And I go, look, John Panel was, and I gave it more information. And with the new information that I would give it, it would construct new things and find more details. Just kind of like a dumb person, like a dumb, confident liar does. You've met these people in true life, the type of people I'm talking about. The people that pretend. And ChatGPT, just because I'm talking about bands, starts to get this cool guy voices. Oh man, those hot, sweaty vibes, that punk vibe, And I'm like, could you stop trying to act cool? It's really annoying. Just give me the info. But anyway, it doesn't know. It's pretending to know. It's making shit up. We used to do that to a kid in high school. Dead now. Brad Burton, nice guy. He was a fat guy. Now everybody's fat. He's basically the size that everybody is now. But back then, there weren't as many fat people. But Brad Burton was a fat guy. Nice guy. I treated him poorly. I used to fuck with him because he was a guy that would lie about things and pretend he knew stuff that he didn't know. And I knew this because I was a little aspiring artist and I was a new waver. And what I would do is I'd draw these band names on this little briefcase that I would carry around. It was my dad's. And I would draw these. I'd draw Devo, Eben Ozen. I still have that briefcase. I should look at it. But Hazy Fantasy, Bronski Beat, all these faggy new wave bands, Depeche Mode, Oingo Boingo. These are logos that I would draw on. But I used to make up fictional bands because I like to just make little album covers, cassette liners, just because it was an art project of mine. Fictional band, I'd make the album cover, whatever. And I liked making their logos. So I would make up these names of these bands, and I'd put them on this briefcase, and Brad Burton would talk about, oh yeah, that band's cool. I like that band. They're one of my favorite bands. And he'd just make up stories about the band, the fictional band that I invented. And I felt bad for the guy in a way. You kind of have to when somebody's talking out of their league, and you know that they're lying because you know what they're talking about. Anyway, this is how I'm feeling about almost everybody talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination and their conspiracy theories. And there's no way it could have been a 30-06. There's no way. You'd have to be a trained sniper. Okay, I was a 14-year-old kid, first deer I ever shot, 150 yards, my 30-30 lever action, standing on a hill, not even laying down with my shoulder propped up. On a hill, one shot right into his neck. Granted, bigger neck than a human. No exit wound, instant kill. You know? Oh, it has to be a pro. Oh, really? Look, I wasn't a pro. I was a 14-year-old kid standing on uneven ground with iron sights, no scope. But anyway, people are talking, and you know very quickly when people don't know what they're talking about. And it's interesting, obviously, because this stuff is all from Utah, and I'm from Utah. I spent the first 28 years of my life there. 2 years. I just figured this out today. I've spent exactly the same amount of time in San Francisco as I did in Utah. 28 years in Utah, 28 years in San Francisco. Because 2 years I was in Brazil. But so when people start talking about Utah and Utah culture, and Tyler could have never known that. He's a dumb Antifa kid. I'm like, no, Tyler was just like me. He was a kid that grew up around hunting. He probably got his hunter safety permit when he was 12, just like me. He went through Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, just like me. He was apparently a good one. He got an Eagle Scout. I didn't. I was offered it, but I declined because I felt like they just wanted me to get it because they wanted to use me as a good example. But I didn't earn it. Let's just put it this way. I didn't earn it, so I said no. But no, he's like that. In fact, he's probably more like that than me because I was from Salt Lake City, a suburb of Salt Lake City, which is rural, but not as rural as St. George. The further you get out of a city, the more likely that guns are going to be part of your life, you know? And I'm not as expert as a lot of people that continued because, again, the first 28 years of my life, for 28 years I've been in San Francisco, and I go on shooting things with some friends when they come into town. When my cousin Colton comes, whatever. But that's not very often. I've gone to the gun range a few times, but I'm not a guy that sits around spending time shooting. But I also know that once you know the principles of shooting, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. There are things that are hard about it, but those are things that are almost harder later than they are early. When you're young and you're first doing it, you're not afraid of it. You're not nervous about it. You don't think it's hard. You just line up the iron sights. You know, put this dot on that, put that on that. As long as your rifle isn't screwed up, just the laws of physics are going to do the rest. You point something at something directly, and the projectile that comes out the end lines up and hits it. You know? Then you calculate distance, but even that is like not that big of a deal. You know if something's far away and the bullet's going to drift, if there's a wind, you can aim it slightly to the side. Just your own basic intuitive things that you use when you're playing golf or throwing a football. It's not that big of a deal. People act like, expertise, you're getting all this training. I'm like, that's a lot of people. There's another class of people too. You can also tell the bullshitters who overdo it. Like you can tell if you know enough about mechanics, You know when a mechanic's lying to you. You know? You also know when they're bragging. You know when your hunter buddies are telling an outlandish story that you know that they're not capable of. You know? So just becoming good at something doesn't mean you're not going to be a liar. You know, and tell a story that benefits you. So there's that too. But the point is I just don't know why. I mean, I guess I do know why, because we all get in that position where sometimes we get in over our head with a little lie, and then it's got to be followed up with another lie. But hopefully that stuff ends in your 20s or 30s. But I guess for some people, they just keep going. They just keep going. You know, they never learn that life is easier and more rewarding if you just, you just tell the truth. You admit when you're wrong. If you don't know something about something, you just listen or go learn about it. You know, you don't need to chime in on every single thing. But yeah, just hearing people talking about Utah. But it's the same thing goes when people are trying to act like, oh, yeah, I spent a year in San Francisco. I know everything about it. Okay, I've been here for 28 years. So I also know when the right wing is overdoing shit about the cities. It's like, okay, yes, there's this, yes, there's that, but reality is a little bit different. I don't know how do you break it to somebody when how do you break it to Brad? I never broke it to Brad Burton. I never did. He died a few years ago of a heart attack. And never did I ever tell him, Brad, those bands that you claim to like, I made them up. I just let him go, I told a few friends, I don't know, maybe I didn't tell. I'm trying to think if I even told any. I never made him the butt of my joke, I don't think. I can't remember. I remember the times I did do that. There was a couple nicknames I gave to people in high school. I was unduly mean about them behind their backs and said some, and I remember them, There was this girl named Leanne. She was a big girl. She kind of had a hunch back, and I called her Leanderthal behind her back. And other people started referring to her as Leanderthal. And, when I first said it, it was really funny. But then when I heard other people saying it about her, I felt awful. I really felt terrible about it. I never apologized to her. I hoped that she never knew that people were calling her Neanderthal. I never saw anybody calling her Neanderthal. If I had, it probably would have been really painful. I was a sensitive kid. I'm still a sensitive kid. I mean, but yeah, so I don't think I ever did that to Brad. I don't think I ever divulged to anybody. And Brad was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. And he was doing it because he wanted to be friends. He wanted to be a pal. He wanted to fit in. So, I mean, how can you really go after somebody like that? It's like well-intentioned. So, I mean, I'm looking around now, but how do you say that's well-intentioned when people are hopping on this bandwagon and saying, oh, yeah, fucking Mossad, the FBI, they're the ones that killed Charlie Kirk, and Erica's in on it, and all of his whole staff is in on it, and it's the Jews, and there's no way he could have done it himself. And I just keep thinking, I could have done it myself. There is nothing Tyler Robinson did that is outlandish to me at all besides murdering somebody. I mean, functionally speaking, I'm saying. Totally easy. The access to guns that I had, that's what's so frightening about that story. That's why it's one of the reasons why it's affecting me so deeply is because I so relate with it so much. How close I already told this story about the time I got my 30-30 out and called 911 and said, I'm going to shoot my stepbrother if he steps foot in this house. 911 came and hauled him away. Didn't even ask me any questions. You know that having the access and the opportunity, driving, if he's got a boyfriend and he's struggling with the fact that he's gay and his parents are straight-laced Mormons, and he's been indoctrinated his whole life that white people and straight people are bad and Mormons are bad. Charlie Kirk's racist, and he's struggling with his own thing about making out with his best friend who happens to be a furry, and he's a furry because he doesn't want to be human because humans are bad. He's been taught that he's bad, 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 bad. You're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Whole life, you're bad, Tyler. You're born bad. It just makes complete sense that he'd go get that rifle, drive up to the college, look around, and think, look how easy this is. I just walk right here. I don't even have to climb this building. I can just walk down the end of this path, hop over this thing, lay down, and take a shot. I can make that shot. You know? He probably made it a number of times before. That's what I would think. I wouldn't have had one bit of hesitation about whether or not I can make the shot. I would say, of course I can make the shot. With Grandpa's gun and Grandpa's scope. You know? Even if he'd probably never fired it. You know, if he thought that the gun was set up correctly, I imagine he probably did set it up correctly. If he got the screwdriver and put it together on the roof. Nothing about it is implausible to me. Nothing. I can see myself doing it. Jumping off the roof. Same, everything. You know, hiding the gun, stashing it, walking. I mean, the video of these kids retracing his steps, it looks like Utah. It looks like the paths I took through my neighborhood. You know, when I would walk to school, I would walk next to the canal instead of through the neighborhoods because the canal was more fun. First of all, it was a shortcut, you know, but it's kind of like you're getting out of the city. You're right in the middle of the city, but because you got the canal going right next to you in a field, a cornfield on the other side, or, you know, an alfalfa field, you know, everything. Of course you stash the gun. And then you go, fuck, why did I stash the gun? I should have just taken it with me. You know, I should have sat here, and instead of stashing it here, I should have knelt down and taken it apart. Oh, fuck, I left the screwdriver on the roof. Damn it. Because that's probably what he was going to do. You know? Put the rifle back down his leg, walk back to his car with that little limp. Nobody cares about a limp. You know, but he stashed it because he forgot the screwdriver. Exactly something I would do. Calm until you take the shot. Then you got your blood boiling. You stand up, you run, and you leave the fucking screwdriver. Damn it. Even the text, you got to wait around. I want to go get the gun, but there's a cop car. You know? Even when they say, oh, kids don't talk like that. Are you kidding me? You never met a nerd? I was a nerd, okay? Drama class. I didn't talk like the Ren Fair guys. He talks more like a Ren Fair guy. But you don't think half the drama class were Ren Fair dudes? Are you kidding me? Half of my classmates in the drama, my love, my liege, are you kidding me? My best friend used to use that kind of language with his girlfriend because of drama. Because we were in Shakespearean plays. Me and my best friend, Brent. We starred in the Comedy of Errors at the Promise Valley Playhouse downtown. And we used to go, and how old was I? This was before my mission, so I would have been 17 or 18. Right? And I had the entire play, Comedy of Errors, memorized word for word. You know? And Brent and I, when we would get done with the play, we'd go over to Crossroads Mall, and the girl at Miss Field's Cookie would give us all the leftover cookies because they were closing down, and Brent and I would have conversations as if we were in Shakespearean days. Not long ones, but we could, and we did. And we fancied ourselves not like the kids in the school. I was never a guy to pick up all the slang. Well, not never, but I always found it very, very cringe before that term became in vogue. Like when people would urban up their accents or start trying to sound cool. It still bothers me. I literally told Grok to stop trying to sound cool. It's annoying. Just speak how you speak. And I was raised with half-decent grammar and a mother that would correct my grammar if it sucked. You can't even say sucked. Don't say sucked. So yeah, I relate with that too. What teenager talks like that? He's 22. He's into furries. He's a nerd. He's online on his video games all day. There's a recording of him saying, I don't have coordinates for that location. Kids don't talk like that. Have you ever met a nerd? People don't know what they're talking about, and it shows. And they just keep on yapping like they know what they're talking about. What was, yeah. The best way to sound dumb is trying to sound smart. Or trying to sound smart is the best way to sound dumb. And I'm sorry, but most people are sounding really, really dumb right now. Well, not most. I should say, here's the weird organization that we're going through right now that's kind of driving me nuts. It's the leading pundits like Candace and Redacted and fucking even Tim Pool, for crying out loud. Like everybody's running with the conspiracy thing because it's getting clicks. I don't want to be that cynical, but it comes down to that. Jimmy Dore, all these people that I typically like. I don't know if Tucker's doing it. I haven't seen what he's been saying about it. But literally all these people are just denying the absolute reality, the obvious things. Yeah, okay, fine, hate the FBI, hate the feds. They're actually providing evidence. These theorists aren't providing any evidence. The evidence that they have is one fuzzy grained video where they're saying, see, there's a blood spurt coming out of above his ear. Turns out to be the chain. Look at it from other angles. That one should be flushed down the toilet, but it doesn't get flushed down the toilet. It keeps going. The exploding pager, you should go, okay, equal opposite force of an action. If an explosion has to go out this way, there's got to be a force going the other way. I don't see anything stopping that pager from flying off or his microphone from flying off his shirt, but it doesn't fly off his shirt. That theory should be flushed down the toilet, but it's not. It keeps going because it's getting clicks. Fucking Candace, I really think she might be crazy. I think she might be crazy right now. The trauma of that event. So with fame, I mean, come on. Trauma will fuck you up. Fame will fuck you up. Being surrounded by yes men will fuck you up. And that's what fame is. When you're famous, you're surrounded by people who are keeping everybody else away. They're saying, yes, you keep doing you. Keep those checks coming in. You combine trauma with fame and influence. How could you not go crazy? How could you not be crazy? She obviously is acting like either crazy or just downright evil. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt, still trying to. I go back and forth. But what I was trying to say is that you got those people, but luckily, there are people that are detractors that are just calling for rationality, and I find most of those people are in the comments. Whew. That's a relief to me. That in most of these outlandish people talking out of their ass, talking out of their ass, you find commenters that are just like, oh, come on, Occam's razor. Dude, it makes sense that he did this. Luckily, I'm finding people that are thinking like me in the comments that haven't just lost their minds, that are able to think rationally and not just sign up for whatever fucking Candace says or whatever Redacted says or whatever some other bonehead says, They're using their eyeballs. So that's good news. I mentioned Gavin McGinnis here a number of times. He's not a good friend of mine or anything, but we met one time, told the story a number of times. We got along famously. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. We just got along. We became best friends at a party one night here in San Francisco. He showed up with David Cross, who was his good pal at the time. And we just hit it off. He told me I look like wind. And people were telling me I look like Jim Morrison and all these other people at the time. And I thought, that's fucking original. That guy's funny. And he was funny. But ever since then, months later, I found out, oh, that's that guy. Oh, he's Vice Magazine. Oh, that makes sense. Vice is cool, blah, blah, blah. But his trajectory and my trajectory have been closely matched. I've just been watching his shows and watching everything. I always go, for the most part, he's a little bit more punk rock and irreverent than I am, a little bit more macho. But beyond that, we mostly match. My friend Sean, a guy who I've never met, but he's been my Facebook friend, guy from Utah, nice guy. He knows a lot of people that I know. He's become his producer since his other producer, Ryan, left. And Sean was taking over Gavin's show a couple weeks ago, right after the shooting. And Gavin does a show called Cops and Robbers where he just hangs out with him and a couple of his cop friends from New York. Beer drinking, bar going, New York dudes, Sean was hosting his show and he said, hey, can you call in? Just call in. Here's the number. So I said, okay, I'll call in. But when he asked me that, I thought I was just going to be talking to Sean, and I thought we were just going to be bemoaning Charlie's assassination because it was just like the day before, or 2 days before, I thought, I'm going to have this sad conversation with Sean. But when I called in the number, I heard the two cops. I go, oh, it's the Cops and Robbers show. I've seen this. And I thought, I don't really have anything to say to these guys. They're just macho, meathead kind of guys. Guys that I kind of typically avoid. I like them, but it's just like cop culture is not my culture. You know what I mean? It's not my, I don't hang out with people anyway. But I mean, that's not the group I hang out with. I never hung out with the people that kick each other in the balls. Like all those male rituals, punching each other in the arm, calling each other faggot. I did it a little bit when I was younger, but as an adult, it's just like, I don't need, hey, everybody, stay away from my balls. I don't need to be kicked in the balls. I'm 58. No more kicking me in the balls, please. So anyway, I hung up. I was like, I don't have anything to say. And then I felt bad. Well, I hung up and Sean texted me back. He said, oh, dude, I was just about to get to you. I was like, fuck. And I tried to think of a lie to say, oh, somebody called me or something, I thought, no, I don't need to lie. It's stupid. So I just called back and I got on the phone. And these guys were immediately trying to bust my balls. I was saying, hey, I'm calling from San Francisco. Well, are you gay? Are you gay? And I say, yeah, close to it. I mean, I live in San Francisco, don't I? I decorate my house. But I said, the reason why I wanted to call in is because, I just wanted to tell the quick story about how, they were talking about how there's no way. Without training, there's no way that kid can make that shot. There's no way. And I was just like, dude, 14 years old, 30-30, lever action. I think I might have told him that I used my stepdad's 30-06 though, because I didn't remember until later that it was my 30-30 that I used. I I used my 30-30 lever action. I was standing on a hill, not flat grounded, not on my belly, which is the best position you can be in, leaning your gun up against something, your arm, at least your elbow on the ground or something. I was standing straight up, 150 yards, one shot, kill shot, right in the neck. So I told that story and, they gave me shit. Started talking about the value of my house and all this other kind of shit. But anyway, what was I going to say? I brought that story up for a reason. The point is I've seen these guys since also talking about this. There's no way my training, without training. And I was like, you guys, I get it. You have guns now, but it's so obvious you didn't grow up around guns. And we all know that kids from New York do not grow up around guns unless they're from the really criminal side of New York. If they're part of the mob, maybe. But that's a totally different culture than hunting culture, So I was basically like, yeah, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what gun culture's like. You don't know how easy it is. And they also are trying to puff up their training. You can tell these guys that are, credentials, only cops know about this shit. It's hard. Our job is so hard. It takes all this training. It's like, dude, you're fat, okay? Most of you cops, you're fat. They're letting these fat black ladies into the force. You don't need to be bragging about being cops. That's been taken off the table of things to brag about, okay? We know that the fat black ladies can be cops. There's no rigorous testing, okay? You don't have to be a marksman. We know that these women aren't marksmen, okay? I mean, they might be, but it should at least go to show you that it don't take much to become a marksman. In fact, when I watch those movies of the snipers and all that stuff, like when they make so much of a big deal about the crosshairs, and okay, granted, if you're taking a long shot, 700 yards, but even then you have equipment available to you now with a laser and the distance measuring that can calculate, the technology takes care of most of it. The only thing that's really impressive about it is that you have the stomach to kill 600 men. And you have the stomach to get yourself in a position, granted, at 700 yards away, hidden, where you can set up a long shot, breathe slowly, aim carefully, and press the trigger right when you do it. And that's the impression I get from Robinson, especially the timing of it. He waited right until he said trans, as if he planned it that way, which is something I would also do. If you're a nerd, you like poetry. So he did something poetic. He waited till he mentioned trans. He had the scope on him, probably for a whole minute. A long, long minute. When your heart is racing, a minute seems like forever. Holding your crosshairs on somebody's chest or on their head, in my opinion, chest he was aiming for, because when you're aiming down, this is something you'll learn, when you're aiming downhill, your bullet is likely to strike above. Kind of goes counterintuitive. You think it would sink down further, but not really. It ends up being a little bit above, Anyway, plausible, likely, most likely, okay? Otherwise, we'd see a dozen people. Even amongst all these possible conspiracy theories, you'd think one of these people would at least make up a source that says, I have a source that has identified the initial photos as not being Tyler Robinson. It's actually Dan Crenshaw. Not the Dan Crenshaw, the senator, his son. And here he is from his yearbook. And here's a plane ticket of his going to Utah. But nothing like that. Everything, every single bit of reason and analysis, if you're just being simple and you're not being a fucking idiot and you're not letting your imagination run away with you, points to, yeah, white kid, indoctrinated. Gonna take one for the team. Gonna be a hero. Gonna be Luigi. Gonna get TikTok screaming in praises to his name. Putting his face on t-shirts. That's what happened, guys. Okay? That's why Luigi did it. That's why Tyler did it. That's why we can expect a lot more to do it. That John, what's his name? That's what he wanted. It's what all these guys want. Infamy, fame, internet. You know? Clicks, likes, shares, subscribes, merch. Tyler's got his face on t-shirts now. You know? Tyler's a hero to maybe not Lance. Lance probably freaked out. Probably didn't want it to go this far. Lance is probably still a good kid from Utah that just got a little bit carried away. You know? Knows how to play piano. I watched a video of him when he was 13 playing piano. Talented kid. Lean towards gay. You know? But he's a hero now. My love. My nerdy, furry love. It's like these people have never seen Comic-Con. Kids don't talk like that. You really have never seen Comic-Con? Have you ever once seen Conan making fun of Comic-Con or any other dozens? Are you pretending you don't know what Comic-Con is? You know? Are they pretending? That's my question. Are you pretending? Or are you just in fucking denial because you don't want to deal with the kindergarten teacher that's hanging up a pride flag and talking to children about their genitals and offering a solution? Well, puberty blockers. Well, castration. Well, blend your genitals. Well, slice off your tits. Don't breed. Don't breed. Don't breed. You're evil. You're white. You're evil. Don't have kids. It worked on me. I've got one offspring, but never raised a family. They got to me the same way they got to Tyler. But they didn't turn me into a revolutionary who's out killing people. I got the watered down version. You know, the early version. The Devo version. The response to Kent State version. That's the one I got. The non-militant version. Tyler got the militant version. And so did your nieces and nephews. And so did your kids. If you're young and you're listening to this, I doubt that. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of Tylers, and they are manufacturing more of them. So maybe fucking stop looking at the feds and stop looking at these people that are trying to divide the right. And that's what they're doing. Candace is dividing the right. I'm almost thinking she's doing that on purpose. You know? A lot of these people are dividing the conservatives. You've got this galvanizing force, which is Kirk's death. You know? This galvanizing force. You felt it. You felt it. The world's coming together. The right is coming. Good people are coming together. We saw the examples. We saw the way they responded with this beautiful, beautiful, touching ceremony that every person that watched it felt. And if you were a half-decent person, you probably cried your eyes out. And we saw that contrasted with the left's response, which was gleeful, joy, evil, giddy, laughter, mockery, shifting, stealing the attention away. No, it's Jimmy Kimmel. He's the victim. The evil response. And now we have all these figures on the right that are taking the conversation away from where it belongs, which is the evil that's happening to the kids in schools and online, and through media. And they've shifted it back to the government did it. Governor Cox did it. MIB did it. The ROTC did it. Fuck you. I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of it. Come to your senses, people. It's right in front of your face. Anyway, it's enough of my yapping. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song.